It started with the kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled. We sat side by side, our elbows nearly touching on the scratched wooden table in the library's far corner, where the lamps burned dim and the windows trembled from the weight of late autumn rain. He had that kind of presence that didn't ask for attention. It just drew it, the warm gravity of someone who laughs easily, but listens even better. I didn't know him well. Not yet. We were only paired by chance, for a group project no one cared about except for the grade. But I'd seen him around before, walking alone with headphones, sketching in the quad during golden hour, laughing with friends like he'd never known silence. And now he was here, beside me, tapping his pencil rhythmically as I scrolled through the presentation notes. "You always work like this?" he asked without looking up. His voice was low, slightly amused, as if he'd been waiting to say something. Like what? So quiet, like you're translating thoughts into code. I glanced at him. His smile curved just slightly, but it was his eyes, warm, watchful, always waiting for the truth beneath the answer, that made me pause. I didn't smile back. Not yet. "I don't like wasting words," I said. That made him laugh softly, a sound that slid under my skin like warmth after a long chill. He nodded, accepting the response like it meant more than it did. Or maybe it did. We worked like that for a while. Not quite in sync, but not in conflict either. Like two instruments tuning toward the same note. He asked little questions. About the project. About me. About whether I believed in luck. I answered what I could, careful not to let too much slip. He talked about music, about how he hated group work but didn't mind it this time. I didn't ask what that meant. Then the power flickered. A gust of wind rattled the windows and the lights dimmed for a breath before humming back to life. He reached instinctively, hand brushing across the table toward mine, just briefly. I didn't move. Neither did he. His fingers settled lightly over mine, not gripping, not holding, just resting, warm, steady, intentional. The moment expanded, fragile and slow. His thumb moved, just slightly, brushing against the side of my hand like a question asked without words. My heart jumped, not because I hadn't thought about it. I had, more than I wanted to admit. But not here. Not like this. And not so soon. Still, I didn't pull away. He exhaled, a soft sound, almost like relief. Or maybe apology. He began, and then stopped. We stayed like that for 3 more seconds. I counted them. And then he pulled his hand back, slow, careful, like untying a knot he hadn't meant to make. I didn't mean, "It's okay," I said quickly, though I didn't know if it was. He looked at me then, really looked. Not with apology, but with something more dangerous. Hope. That quiet, flickering kind of hope that lives in between what's said and what's felt. "I wasn't going to say anything," he murmured. "Not yet. I don't know. It felt right. I wanted to say something clever or something cautious or something that would let me keep my heart where it was, guarded, tucked away. But instead I asked, 'And now?' He smiled, softer this time. 'Now I'll probably think about this. All night.' That made me smile. Just a little. We didn't talk much after that. The work resumed. Pages flipped. The world righted itself, even if my pulse didn't. But when he left, hood pulled up, backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder, he paused at the door and looked back. He didn't say anything, just met my eyes for a second, as if to say, "You felt that too." And I did. But what I didn't feel, not then, was the unraveling already beginning beneath it all. The quiet truth waiting behind that smile. The one that would change everything. His hand had slipped over mine. Warm. Gentle. And I wasn't ready for what came next. He started waiting for me after class. Never said it aloud, never made a point of it. But I began to notice the way he lingered by the door, scanning faces until his eyes found mine. We'd fall into step naturally, like we'd rehearsed the timing. No grand gestures, just proximity. And yet there was a pull between us, gentle, steady, undeniable. We weren't anything, not officially. No titles, no promises. Just long conversations stretched across campus lawns, coffee cups exchanged without asking how the other takes it, shared glances when something unspoken passed between us like static. He'd sit across from me, spinning a pen between his fingers while I typed. Sometimes he'd hum under his breath. Sometimes he'd lean closer, pretend to look at my screen, only to murmur something like, "You always scrunch your eyebrows when you concentrate." I'd pretend to be annoyed. He'd laugh like he knew better. That rhythm settled into something dangerously comforting. He became a part of my day without ever asking to be, and I let him. One evening, we ended up beneath the overpass behind the art building, hiding from the rain that had surprised us both. He took off his hoodie and draped it over my shoulders like it was second nature. I remember thinking how easily his warmth replaced the chill in my spine. "It's funny," he said, pulling his knees to his chest. "I used to think I hated silence." I looked at him. His voice was quieter in the rain, like it wasn't meant to carry far. "But this," he continued, "this kind of silence, I could stay in it for hours." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just let the moment stretch between us, full of what hadn't been said and what didn't need to be. His shoulder brushed mine again. Not accidental this time. I didn't move. "You ever feel like you're on the edge of something, but you're scared to ruin it by naming it?" he asked. The question hung in the air between us like mist. I nodded, because I did. Every second I spent with him felt like balancing on a tightrope I didn't know I was walking. He turned toward me, and for a breath, the world narrowed. His eyes held mine. His lips parted like he might say something, or do something. But then his phone buzzed. He looked down just briefly. Just a glance. But it was enough. His whole posture shifted, subtle but sharp. The light in his expression dimmed. His body turned slightly away as he stood and cleared his throat. "We should probably go," he said, brushing rain from his sleeves. I nodded again, even though the warmth had drained from my chest. That moment lingered with me. The almost. The retreat. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That maybe he just remembered a responsibility, or got spooked by the closeness. But it stuck, like a splinter just beneath the skin of an otherwise perfect day. A few nights later, I was walking home when I found a small envelope tucked into the front pocket of my bag. No name, no handwriting I recognized, just a folded piece of heavy paper. Inside was a sketch. Two figures on a park bench beneath a street lamp, one looking at the other while the second stared forward, unaware. It was us. Even the way my hands were clasped in my lap, it was exact. No words, no message, just art speaking for what he wouldn't say aloud. I stared at it for a long time, heart thudding so loud I could barely hear the world around me. The next time I saw him, I didn't ask about it. He didn't mention it either, but we both knew it had been left for me. From then on, the silences between us changed. They felt fuller, heavier, charged. He'd reach for my wrist during a joke, let his touch linger just a second too long. Our knees would brush under tables. And yet, nothing was said. He never kissed me. I never asked why. And still, I thought we were building something delicate and real, slow, intentional, precious. But there were moments, flickers, when his phone would light up and he'd tilt it away, or when he'd go quiet after seeing a message. Little things, forgettable things, except I didn't forget. I just chose not to ask, because I didn't want the truth yet. Not if it meant losing, the way he made me feel. Not if it meant admitting I might not be the only one. The unraveling began slowly, like a thread pulled from the hem of something I thought was whole. It didn't snap. It slipped, quietly, until I couldn't ignore the fray. It started with the missed texts. Not the kind you notice at first, just a few hours of silence where there used to be quick replies, a delayed answer here, a vague excuse there. I told myself he was just busy, midterms, part-time shifts, life piling up like it does for all of us. But still, I knew him. And this wasn't just distraction. We hadn't talked about us, not directly. But there was a closeness that felt like something real, something earned. He still showed up, still smiled like I was his favorite part of the day. But something in his eyes had shifted, something faint, fleeting, but it was there. One afternoon, I passed by the sculpture garden on my way to class. He didn't see me. He was seated on the low stone ledge, head tilted, laughing softly at something someone else said. A girl. Her laugh reached me before anything else. Bright and open, the kind of sound that wraps around you like a scarf. She was pretty in the casual, effortless way that doesn't ask for attention, and she leaned close to him, close enough that the distance between them could be mistaken for intimacy. He didn't touch her. Not then, but his eyes softened in a way I'd come to think was only meant for me. I looked away before he noticed me. That night I stared at my phone screen for what felt like hours. I typed out messages, erased them, typed again. My heart raced, but my fingers refused to finish the thought. I wasn't ready to ask, not because I didn't want to know, but because I already did. The next time we met, he smiled the same way as always, offered me a hot drink I hadn't asked for but appreciated all the same. We talked about small things, classwork, campus gossip, weekend plans neither of us meant to keep. But I watched him more carefully this time. He was still kind, still present, but he wasn't all the way here. I waited until our cups were empty and the air between us had cooled. "Are you seeing someone else?" I asked, steady even. He froze for half a second, just long enough to tell me everything. "I'm not seeing anyone," he said. A pause. "But..." His fingers tightened around his cup. "I've been talking to someone. From before. We'd stopped for a while, but she reached out. I didn't expect it." I nodded slowly, even though my stomach had begun to hollow out. "And you answered," I said. His voice dropped. "I didn't know how to tell you." "You didn't think you had to." He winced. "I didn't want to hurt you." A bitter smile pulled at my lips. "Then you should have stopped before you reached for my hand." Silence stretched again, no longer comfortable, not shared. He looked at me like he wanted to say something else, something redeeming. But words failed him in the moments that mattered most. "I didn't plan this," he said finally. "I believe you," I whispered. "But that doesn't make it better." We sat there side by side, the way we had so many times before. But the space between us was sharp now, cold. "I wish I could go back," he murmured. I didn't answer, because so did I. When we stood to leave, he didn't walk beside me. He didn't offer his hoodie or reach for my hand. And I didn't wait for him to. That night I unfolded the sketch he'd left me weeks before. The one of us on the bench under the street lamp. I stared at the lines he'd drawn, the way one figure looked toward the other, oblivious to the gaze. I understood now what he'd meant. It had always been me who looked first. Always me who felt more. And maybe he did care. Maybe he did. But sometimes care isn't enough. Sometimes care still chooses someone else. Weeks passed, not all at once, but in uneven stretches, some slow and quiet, others jagged with memory. His name stopped appearing on my lock screen. My steps took unfamiliar routes to avoid places we used to meet. But even in distance he lingered, like a half-erased drawing on the wall of my mind. No matter how many layers I tried to paint over him with, he bled through. I saw him again, once, by accident. He was at the campus cafe, standing in line, earbuds in, alone. Our eyes met, just briefly. He didn't look away. Neither did I. But we didn't speak. No wave, no smile. Only a flicker of recognition and the hollow ache of what once felt inevitable between us. I thought I would miss him forever. And for a while I did. But missing became quieter with time. Softer. Like the edge of a paper cut healing under your skin. Still there, but no longer sharp enough to bleed. What surprised me most was what I missed. Not the romantic maybes or the tension of almosts, but the version of myself I had been with him. Open, naive, hopeful. That part of me hurt, the most to lose. One rainy afternoon I found myself in the library, wandering between aisles out of habit more than purpose. That's where I saw it, tucked between two books on sketching, a familiar notebook. Slim, black, the kind he always carried. I reached for it, fingers trembling before they even touched the cover. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Inside were pages filled with sketches, moments frozen in pencil and shadow. Us. My laugh, half-turned. The curve of my hand holding a coffee cup. The bench beneath the street lamp. The rain shelter. And then, her. Drawn with the same softness, the same care, but on a separate page. On the final spread, he had drawn us both, standing at opposite ends of a bridge that didn't quite connect. No words, just that space, that silence again. I closed the notebook and returned it to its place. It wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never was. Later that evening, I sat on the hill overlooking the city skyline, the sky cracked open with the glow of streetlights and distant windows. I thought of all the things I could have said to him, all the ways I might have rewritten the ending. But the truth was simple. He had a choice, and he made it. Not out of malice, not even out of cowardice, but out of uncertainty. He didn't choose me. And that was enough. Still, I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. He taught me something. Without meaning to. He taught me that love, when it's real, doesn't hesitate. It doesn't hide behind almosts or wait for the perfect timing. It shows up, fully, bravely, and without a fallback plan. I had shown up. And that mattered. Maybe one day he'd remember me, not just the sketches or the silences, but the way I had been all in, without question. Maybe he'd feel the weight of what he lost, not out of regret, but recognition. But even if he didn't, I would remember. I would remember the softness of his voice in the rain, the warmth of borrowed sweaters, the way his eyes softened before the truth hardened them. I would remember, and I would let it go. Because some love stories don't end with forever. Some end with finally. Finally understanding your worth. Finally choosing yourself. Finally closing the sketchbook.